I would like to thank Pastor Greg for invitation to preach this morning, excuse me, but also to lead communion. It's a special privilege. The Methodist Church recognizes two sacraments. Sacraments. What's a sacrament? It sounds like a real churchy, religious term or word, and, well, it is. One definition of a sacrament could be a sacrament is a Christian rite of importance and significance. Boy, if that doesn't sound like a dictionary definition, I don't know. I really like this one. A sacrament is a visible symbol of the reality of God, as well as a channel of grace, of God's grace. Yeah, I'm going to go with that one myself. Obviously, I have been in the Methodist Church all my life, and I've heard many pastors starting a baptism service, and it's interesting. I love it when they say baptism, it's kind of like God saying, this one's mine. Think about it. Parents or guardians bringing a child. I know in the Methodist Church it's usually an infant, but it can be older. But they're bringing a child to be baptized, and they are pledging, they're promising an awesome promise. They're saying, we will raise this child. We will raise this child. We will teach him or her the Old and New Testaments. We will take them to private and public worship services. We'll try and be a Christian example for them all of their lives. We, the church body, members of the Church of Christ, we make the same promise too. Next time we have a baptism, listen to the liturgy. We're making a promise too, that we will try to be an example of Christ in their lives. Communion. Do this in remembrance of me. There's many scriptures that refer to communion. 2 Corinthians, Matthew 26, Luke 22, Gospel of Mark and John. Actually, if you think about it, Jesus participated in both the Methodist sacraments. He was baptized by John the Baptist, and he kind of started communion. He actually commanded communion. He started communion, obviously, with the Last Supper. Human beings need food. We need food to live. A meal could be, my favorite, a steak, loaded baked potato, and a salad. A meal could be some bread and wine. The Master was being very literal when he said, do this in remembrance of me. What does communion mean to you? The Master said to remember us. Remember him. How do we remember someone? Think about that. How do you remember someone? Send flowers. Send a card. Do you know that FTD Flowers has an annual income of $1.1 billion? That's a lot of flowers. Hallmark, the card store, $5 billion. I have a small pet peeve. I have a bone to pick with Hallmark card store. For over 40 years, I've been trying to find a card saying, "Happy birthday to my favorite mother-in-law." Still haven't found one. I'd like to say when I can that I have one favorite mother-in-law. Many times I get, "How many do you have?" A side note, if you please. I would like to seriously thank all those in the medical profession. Those of you who know when I have prayer in a hospital setting, I pray for the patient, but also the staff. My favorite mother-in-law fell Wednesday evening. Took a ride in an ambulance. Friday afternoon, had hip surgery, and Mom is doing great. So Doc Simmons, Mark, I'm picking on you guys. The surgeon called Bonnie before the surgery, after the surgery. I know medical people do their job every single day of the year, and we only see it when we need it. Pastor Greg was correct when he said that communion means a lot to me. It's very special. The very first year of college for me, many, many years ago, I had a reading assignment. And the reading assignment was, of all things, an article on communion. And in essence, what this article was saying, that when we take communion, when we participate, when we take the elements of bread and wine, what we're doing is we're asking God to be active in our lives. Every aspect of our lives, our relationships, our business dealings with, our marriages. And every time I take communion, I'm saying this to myself and still believing I want God active and participating in every aspect of my life. And I read that article 47 years ago, and it still has stuck with me. Jesus said, "Do this in remembrance of me." I don't believe the Master was saying, "Remember me on my birthday. Send me a card. Send me some flowers." I believe what the Master was saying, "Remember me. Remember what I taught you. I loved you. Now love one another." The last time I spoke to you on a Sunday morning, I shared with you that I struggled with watching or listening to the news. I still am. It's almost the reality of our world, nation, city. It's like getting worse. We live outside the city of brotherly love, and yes, we had the news on this morning, and yes, there were at least 2 shootings last night. Heaven forbid I get used to the news. Trust me, I never will. The first time I ever heard this phrase was from Pastor Tom, and I thought he was talking about, kind of here and now. And the phrase was, "We live in a broken world. Really thought he was talking about here and now, but I've been hearing that phrase in different places and more. Actually, in a book that Pastor Greg had the staff and leadership council read, it was in this book too. We live in a broken world. The book was talking about John Wesley's time. It got me thinking that we have been living in a broken world ever since leaving the Garden of Eden. We are living in a broken world. And if there was ever a time to remember the Master's command, he commanded, I have a new commandment for you. Love one another. I did it. I showed you the way. I know in our world, it sounds simplistic. I do listen to the news and wonder, how can the world change? What can change? If we could love one another, I think it's a start. Maybe it's not, you see a homeless person, don't look away. See someone outside Wawa asking for money, don't go in the other door. Another aspect of communion that is special for me. I don't know when it started, quite a few years ago, to be honest with you. For a number of years, during communion, there's a phrase in the liturgy, and we will feast at the heavenly banquet. My mind goes back to, of all things, C.S. Lewis's 5th book in the Chronicles of Narnia. It's called The Journey of the Dawn Treader. It was a ship. It was a wooden ship. And at one point in the book, the ship comes into this harbor, comes into an island, and they anchor the ship. And the crew gets off the ship and starts to explore the island. And of all things, they come across this huge, immense table, like in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, it is like fit for a king. I mean, there's gold silverware. There's gold goblets. And the food, well, just amazing. And for some reason, every time I hear the phrase, and we will feast at the heavenly banquet, I think of this table, and I say, Mom, pass the mashed potatoes. I lost my mom in 2008, and Dad Shannon 2 years later. Boy, that phrase just sticks with me. For those of us who have been extremely blessed with Christian parents who, they answered the call. They did the pledge. They did raise my sister and myself and you in the scriptures, in the Christian faith. And then by the grace of God, we accepted Christ's teachings as ourselves. For those of us who have had loved ones pass, who knew the Master, I promise you, we will one day feast at the heavenly banquet. One more aspect of communion that means a lot to me. It's probably because I'm Methodist, been in the Methodist church all my life. It's the Methodist communion invitation. I love it. The Methodist communion invitation is, it's an open table. Here's the invitation. You don't have to be a member of this church or of any church. Allow me to add, maybe the one thing you need to be is a seeker. You're seeking something better for your life. There's like a hole. There's something missing. Or maybe you're seeking something better for this world. I'll probably say it again, the invitation, but the invitation is open. And with that, let us continue and confess our sins.